So this is what we do, kind of a rolling start. So see, like we've been talking and then we just kind of go, hey,
Hi.
we're here. So so today is episode 9.
9, yes.
The Aging Arborist Podcast. I remember when we started, my goal was kind of like, let's get 10 or 12 in and kind of see how it goes, you know? And so here we are, episode 9.
Yep.
We're getting there. So today, this is our first female guest. We're pretty excited. This is Athena Odell. Right?
Correct.
I'm getting this correct. She hails from New York. What is the town?
Poughkeepsie.
Oh, you're from Poughkeepsie, right. I actually know that town. It's long on the sign.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's long.
Yeah,
on
very
the sign.
long.
Yeah.
Spelt very oddly.
Yep.
Got it.
So Athena is a mom,
Yes.
right? You're a wife,
Yes.
tree worker. You climb.
Yes.
Did you say you're ISA certified? Yeah,
yep.
you're ISA certified. What am I missing? Fill me in.
Let me add something.
Yeah,
real quick.
yeah.
The big thing is the energy and interest that you have in the industry is what I'm most excited about. I just want to add that because that's important. Because anybody can be all that stuff, but if you're really not interested in the industry, it's just a conversation. You know what I mean?
No, you kind of really have to. You have to have a love for it to stick with it.
So I just want to make sure we add that. She definitely has that as well.
No, I think it's great, and I know because the connection was Athena's the first guest that I don't personally know.
Yeah,
which is interesting, and it's not that it's bad; it's good because I love these explorative conversations and trying to get to know somebody. But you know, we've been drawing from like our circle.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that Brick mentioned to me about you was that his first interaction was at an instructional thing he was doing.
Right.
And that immediately you were like, I'm really into this. You know, he was like, no, man, she just brought this vibe and this curiosity, the willingness to kind of dig in. And if this podcast is about anything, I hope that it's about not just, because we can open that door and we can just roll people through here just to have a guest. But to have somebody that shares the passion and curiosity, the thirst to kind of, and also just keep growing.
Yeah.
That's really, I remember when you did your promo, you sat in that stool out there and your thing was like about growth. All right. So we'll run through the credentials and then we'll kind of dig in. So certified arborist, you were saying.
Plant healthcare specialist. I have my commercial pesticide applicator license.
Cool.
And Dutchess County tree steward.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, just a bunch of random things.
That's cool about filling in stuff and picking things up along the way, right?
Well, there's literally an endless amount of subjects that you can learn about trees or plants or bugs or funguses. Fungi. That was probably
fungi.
Yeah.
Yeah, funguses, fungi. We get it. We know what you meant. Yeah.
Yep.
No, and that's, I mean, I think that's one of the things about the industry that keeps us engaged. I remember sitting down, Dr. Chris Luley in our world is kind of a fungi specialist. His big thing is wood decaying fungi. He's written a couple books. And I just remember sitting in his class one time and I'm like, wow, this dude has his PhD in wood decaying fungi.
And probably has just touched the surface of, you know, what he even knows about mushrooms. Mushrooms are absolutely, that's a very big world.
It is.
Yeah.
So I just find it interesting how diverse we can be. You know, you can be an arborist and never leave the ground. You know, you can be a climber and not really understand necessarily biology and function and
that's usually just sad.
Things like that.
No, it's sad for the tree, you know, because like if they don't know why they're making a cut where they're making it, you know, it doesn't end up being in the right spot.
Exactly.
Yeah. To that point, like it's we probably touched on this a couple of times, but it's a living organism, not an object. And that is the problem. It is sad. It is sad that this is a profession where things have to get done, and I understand it. But everybody in the industry should be pushing towards, it's a job, but you still have to do it the right way possible for the tree.
Right.
At all times. It's not an object that you just go do the thing and then you go home. It shouldn't be, at least, in my opinion.
No, because you just go there and you're like, all right, just spend half a day, you know, get it done in the half a day. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And then the tree is half pruned, and then the next windstorm comes and they have a bunch of broken branches that are in their yard, and then they're calling the company like, didn't you just come and prune this for dead wood? Why did that windstorm have what, like, why is my yard full of branches? And they were like, I did my half a day. We can come back for another half a day if you want, like, I don't know.
No, and that was a common thread with Todd Pearson. We were talking about, like, just understanding that there is a business component to it.
Sure.
Right? I get it, production, business, but there's also, like, once you understand how to get that going a little bit, you should go back to the idea that we are working with something that is not, that reacts to what you do with it.
Right. And that's a difference between, just a tree company and like an arborist company.
Exactly.
Anyone can just be a tree guy and come run a chainsaw and go cut stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your tree is going to be alive in 5 years.
Yeah. Great.
I love that she just hit on, like, your main thing, because the big distinction, excuse me, that you always make is the difference between a sort of a tree worker, just a person who's executing a task, and the arborist mindset, and how there's a little bit of a distinction. But let me just back up, because I'd like to know, I want to back up to the beginning of your story in terms of tree work. First of all, how long have you been doing tree work? Like, and then I want to get into, like, how did you get introduced to it? And then your passion shows that you kind of fell in love with it to some degree. So just kind of walk us through and the listeners through that path. How did you come to it?
The easiest answer that I have to give when people ask me that is I'm just a big kid. I never grew up. I never stopped climbing trees.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was a cook mostly, started off as soon as I could get my blue papers at 15 as a dishwasher, worked my way up to head chef, and always loved being outside. Fell into, just off a random Facebook post at 6 o'clock in the morning, fell into building koi ponds and waterfalls. So for 5 years, like spring, summer, fall, I would more full-time be building koi ponds and waterfalls, doing restaurant work part-time. And then once the cold weather hit, I would switch and I would be restaurant full-time. And I did that for over 5 years, just it was like the seasons, doing the constant switching. And it was, I was always working, always had like 3-4 jobs, but it was always a lot of turnaround, basically. And I was actually bartending one day, and this guy came in. I kind of felt bad. You remember it when you're like a waitress, or, if you just like forget something for someone or you ignore them, and it was jam-packed busy. And he was really simple. All he wanted was vodka in a cup, no ice, no nothing. He just sat there. So I literally took his order, and after that didn't speak a single word to him. I would just walk over to him with the bottle of vodka. If he shook his head yes, I'd fill his cup, and if he shook his head no, I gave him his bill. And completely ignored him the whole night and felt bad about it. About 2 weeks later, he comes in, same exact thing, jam-packed, busy. And I'm like, oh, he didn't really care last time. Like, whatever. Completely ignored him again, just completely ignored him. And then he comes in the next day during like slow lunch period where it was absolutely dead. And we started actually talking, and we were both into like metal music and, like just, it was just like, he was just a really chill dude. Okay. And, then he goes, last night I was having dinner with a buddy of mine, and I was talking to him about you. I was like, one of these.
Where's this going?
Like, oh God. And he was like, no, nothing like that. He was like, I just, the last couple times that I've been in here, just watching you work, seeing how you interact with people, I overheard you talking to another customer about going to their house over the weekend and doing some yard work. And that, you do outside work. Have you ever done tree work? And I'm like, not really. I mean, like cutting down trees. He was like, yeah. I was like, not really, like just basic yard work. And he was like, I don't know. My buddy of mine has a tree company, and he's not really looking to hire right now. They don't need any extra people, but I don't know. For some reason, I feel like it would be a fit for you, so here's his number. If you want, give him a call. And I'm like, immediately, I have 5 jobs right now. I don't, there's no way I could fit another job in. Like, I don't, like, thanks, but
You're
I don't know,
feeling
whatever.
maxed.
But I took the number anyway, and a couple days later, my curiosity got the best of me. Called the number. It ended up being Kevin Kenny at Bartlett Tree Experts.
Oh, wow.
And so I went down, I drove down there. We ended up having like a 2-hour conversation. I walked out of the office, went into my car, and put my 2 weeks notice in to all my jobs.
All of them?
Really?
All of them.
Wow.
I've been doing tree work since.
So what?
It's been a little over 10 years.
There we go.
What in that conversation? What in that conversation made that switch where you were like, yeah, I'm gonna try this? Like, what was it about?
So,
Yeah.
When you got in the car,
Yeah.
something clicked to where you're like, I'm done. 2 weeks notice for all my jobs. I'm going with this. That's what he's asking.
Yeah.
In that in the 2-hour conversation, you go to the car and you make your decision.
Yeah.
How?
Like it was.
What is that?
Like, what did he say? How did he describe what you would be doing that you were like, I want to try this?
It was probably kind of like what you said. It was his passion, and just had a lot of the same values that I have, and I very much like working with my hands and being outdoors and being able to have like one job all year, and not have to do the constant switching, was pretty cool. Like I could be outside, and once it gets cold, I don't have to like find a restaurant to work at, which was never really a problem, but it's still like a pain. Like,
my coworker, we had this conversation before. It's there's stability and there's floating. Sounds like you always felt like you were like winter came. Now I got to float and find a spot, and
the variety, we were talking about. There's so many different avenues that you can go into. Like he was like immediately like you could start doing some of the labor stuff. You could start learning about bugs. You could start learning about different kinds of plants. You could start doing stump grinding. You could play around with like machines. Like there's literally any avenue that you can take. And it was like, I like doing that too, because I get bored easy. I don't want to do the same thing every day. And tree work, I mean, you could, even if you do the same tree, it's not going to be the same thing twice, like the way you go about it, because you're going about it, like usually if you're doing a tree more than once, you're pruning it, and hopefully not taking it down. Hopefully you did a good job and the tree survived
exactly.
But, if something happens and windstorm comes, breaks it in half, you have to take it down, whatever. But if you're going to a tree multiple times, you're pruning it, and you're not pruning the same branch every time you go, you're pruning it for different things. So you climb it differently. Yeah. It's like a different puzzle every time.
It reminds me of like the work climb. Like you have the same tree, but you move the bells, completely different climb.
Changes.
Right.
So the targets change.
Yeah.
So every time you,
absolutely.
Which is pretty cool. Just a weird kind of, this popped into my head, like a random sort of unpaid, this is not a sponsor thing, but kind of a shout out to Bartlett for the simple fact that there's a lot of us in the industry. So I worked for like a small company, and then I had a stint at a Bartlett office.
Okay.
And what I say is they taught me how to learn. So I was working for a company that was more take down, prune this branch. It was a little more, let's say a little less arborist, a little more work. The guy in hindsight now knew more than he shared early on, but then going to Bartlett, I went in the office and there were books.
Yeah.
And, they had like Shigo stuff. And I thought, there's a whole science here. Yeah. And as a kid, I loved science.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started that explorative process, and I spent a year with Bartlett. And I find that there are a lot of folks in our industry that benefit from a stint at a Bartlett office.
Very much.
And also
so.
we benefit because they do a lot of paid research and stuff. They have
they
Bartlett
have their
labs.
own labs and everything. Yeah.
So the industry as a whole, really, we all benefit from, I think, that sort of large business model that they have. And they bring a lot to the industry. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really sad. The only reason why, it was Elmsford was like an hour and a half drive for me, so it's the hour and a half drive there in the morning, then the morning meeting. That office is a lot of like City Island, Central Park, Manhattan, did a lot of work at Ground Zero. So from the Elmsford office to the city, it's like another hour and a half, and then if it's a prevailing wage thing, because it's a city contract, the city contract people, like, they'll sit in their lawn chairs and make sure that you're working for 8 hours, and then the hour and a half drive back to the shop, putting all the tools away, getting changed, whatever, hour and a half drive back to my house. It was like,
that's a long day.
Yeah. Getting up at 3 a.m, not getting home till 10 o'clock at night. It was just, too far.
It's unsustainable long term. How long did you stay there? Did you
like
say?
8 months?
Okay.
Almost a year.
Yep.
And then I switched to Red Cedar, up in
different
Hopewell,
office,
Wappingers,
or a different company.
Different company.
Okay.
The company Red Cedar.
Gotcha. So when you did work at Ground Zero, you didn't happen to prune those swamp white oaks in the.
No, I didn't prune the swamp white oaks, but we planted the ones that are in the planters around the thing. Yeah, okay. I planted those.
Good.
Well, I was just going to say, there's a cool history there. There's a nursery near us called, up north, Halka Nurseries. And so I'm used to be certified tree expert in the state of New Jersey, but now it's licensed tree expert. Anyway, we would have these dinners, like these dinner meetings, and one of them was hosted at Halka Nurseries. And at the time, they had the swamp white oaks in these giant containers that they were growing for the that area there where they're all planted, right around the museum and everything, where they were on this like watering schedule and pruning. They were trying to get them all the same height, all the same size, and then
because it needed to be very uniform.
Yeah, and when they did that, they brought all of them in on like tractor trailers and lowered them into the holes. And so I was curious when you said that. I was like, "Ooh!" My family and I went there not too many years ago. And there they were, and I was like, "Oh, cool story about this," that people I knew were like involved. I think Paul Cowie was.
Well, I was gonna say Jason Bond.
Oh yeah,
he was at the nursery. He was the one doing the routine.
Really?
Watering,
pruning. It's so funny how small of a world it is sometimes.
I mean. That's what I'm saying.
Shout out to Jason Bond.
Is that for real? Because when you were mentioning, I'm like, oh, maybe you know who he is. But I don't think, obviously you're up north. I don't even know where he's out of, but definitely New Jersey. But because in the video, you probably saw the video of the preparation of those trees for that location. He's the one in the video.
Okay.
Talking about like the whole process.
I don't think I've ever seen the video.
No?
No, I'll have to.
I feel like I saw it at a conference or something like that. But yeah, just crazy. Like almost.
And I didn't realize that was that was his project.
Yeah.
But I was pretty enamored with it. And interestingly enough, since that point, I actually planted one 2 years ago now at my house, swamp white oak, and I recommend them when the people have space for it because it's such a cool specimen.
Very much
especially when it's really big and you can climb it.
Well, they
love it.
They get a pretty cool structure. So now we're just nerding out on trees, which is appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you were at Bartlett, and then you left and you went to Red Cedar.
I kind of and just life since then. Trees, so went to Red Cedar. That's when I had my accident.
So and we obviously we always talk before the podcast actually starts, and she did disclose the story. So if it's cool with you, if you dive into the story, because I think the listeners do. So I will say this: I don't know if you noticed, the cool thing about telling the story of a near miss or an accident is that people can learn from the lesson from that experience. Unfortunately, we do have an industry that loves to jump on people, saying, "Well, that wouldn't happen if you learn," and it's like that's not the point of the story.
No, it's learning so that it, success is 99% failure. You don't get there until you get there.
I was like,
he's gonna be pulling that for the Instagram page. That's
that
like,
good.
Love that.
Yeah. But so I just want to make that for the listeners. this is the point of these stories. Derek Martin shared his story.
Yeah.
Tatey shared his story. So the point of your story is not, well, you shouldn't have done that. I would have never done that. It's more of understanding the situation so that new people in the industry and intermediate and even experts can also have a refresher and like, oh, you know what? We do have a job that has a very high risk.
Yeah.
If we don't pay attention, we have consequences for that. So if it's cool with you, dive into that story because I'm blown away by it. Yeah.
It was just when it was in my first year of climbing, and we were at a house where they're like 70, 80-foot trees. They prune just like they're, rose bushes in front of the house. They wanted everything shaped very nicely. So I was on the inside of the tree getting all of like the dead wood and any of the branches that needed to be done. There was a guy in the bucket truck on the outside of the tree doing all the shaping.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally had one more branch to go. And, this is in the beginning, so I didn't have like any kind of ascenders, using a double rope system. I needed to get to a branch that was like just right over there, but there was a branch above me that was going to be in the way for me being able to just swing over there. Yep. So I undid my flip line and I was foot locking to go over that branch. And there was a mishap with my rope and I fell about 30 feet because I didn't have I was just foot locking on my rope and broke my wrist pretty bad.
Just for the listener, you're saying when you foot lock, you're talking about foot locking the tail of the double rope, right? Is that what you mean? Like the tail, you're still attached.
Yeah, like rope. I had a Blake's hitch.
Yeah, okay.
And I was just like old school foot locking and pushing myself up.
So my point is for the listeners, you're not free climbing foot locking.
No.
You're still tied in, but you're just foot locking the tail part of the rope.
Right.
And pushing your system up.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, there's still that.
Yeah, I wasn't like actually climbing the tree and had, grabbing branches. It was just like a big open space that I needed to get higher to get over the one branch to swing over to the other side of the tree.
And then there's the mishap with the rope.
Yeah. Okay. And I fell about 30 feet. I had 13 surgeries over 18 months, 8 months of physical therapy, 4 times a week.
So, and if Ben has to, from this point, edit, that's fine. There was an element of like, we didn't want to, but it was can I say like it was a coworker? Like there was
yeah.
Okay. That created the issue?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just park it there. Because there's always, like Brick always says for the listeners, because they're trying to follow a story. And it's like, geez, I wonder what happened. What did she do? What mistake did she make? Blah, blah, whatever. Yeah. But some things are out of our control.
Right.
Right. And things happen. And we were sharing a story about Rachel earlier, another woman that we know that had an issue. And so one thing that I'm pretty impressed by, because it's kind of unspoken, is you had this, but then didn't decide that was going to be it for you. So
no,
you must have, in my old martial arts training, one of our codes was have an indomitable spirit, like a spirit that won't be overcome by adversity. So you got some kind of mechanism in your head. What was it that allowed you to, first of all, and I do this, I'm sorry, I'm spiraling a little bit. You get injured, all the surgeries, the physical therapy. While you're going through this, are you kind of saying to yourself, I can't, did you know right away if you'd be able to go back?
They told me that I would never climb again. And it wasn't the first time that a doctor had told me that I'd never be able to do something again. And I was like, that's not an option.
Okay.
And, figured it out anyway. So they told me I'd never be able to climb again. I was like, yeah, that's not happening. Okay. I love climbing too much. There's no way. Through all the surgeries and everything, I still, I only missed 2 months of work. I was in the office, did a lot of the bookkeeping, scheduling, started learning sales. That's when I started doing the classes for all the PhD stuff and started getting my PhD licenses. And then, once you like you have like limits of what you can do, you know? So I'd be like on a 10-pound limit. I couldn't do anything that would require me to do anything over 10 pounds, you know, but a lot of the plant healthcare stuff you could do, and it's less than 10 pounds, sure. You know? So started just kind of was still able to like work and stay in the industry. I just was learning something different, you know? And then finally got to the point where I was like physically able to do things better. And we decided that I was going to try going up in the bucket truck. And I, it was just simple, easy job, you know, nothing like they scheduled it for the whole day, even though it wasn't going to need the whole day. So I could just take my time, you know, go nice and easy. We went to the job. I got in the bucket truck. I got about level with like the second story window to the house, and I had to come down. I got too scared. I was like, you know, profusely sweating. I was like shaking. I was like, and then I came down, and my supervisor was like, because he came to just be there to just make sure everything was going to go okay. You know, so he, you know, was going to call somebody else to come and do the job, and we'll figure out something different for me to do. And as soon as he said that, I was like then my ego it stepped in, you know, and I was like, let me try again. And he was like, nope. I saw how you were. I saw that reaction. Like, it's going to, like, you know, it's all right. You just won't go up again. And I'm like, no, like, no, that's not an option, you know? And it took me about like 10 minutes, but I convinced him to let me try again. Went in the bucket truck, and it was, you know, had like an elevator, and I cherry picked it. I put up the elevator straight up in the air, and I grabbed the edge of the bucket, and I squatted down in the bucket, like down below the edge. And I just sat there, and I just like white knuckled it, and just like sat there getting used to the swaying. And then like I slowly peeked my head up, and I just like stood there for a little bit. I was like, you know, and then I went down, and I just started working. And then I got focused on working, and like the tree and everything just like came back, and I was fine, you know, but it was like, I had to just like go in there and go all the way up and, and just do it, you know? And then once I did it, I was fine.
So
it's
like, fascinating.
So,
I
mean, I get nervous now. Like when 30, 35 feet, once I get to there, I start to get nervous, you know, unless it's like, if you're pruning a really solid, like, you know, your favorite, your oaks, you know, like you're pruning a really solid oak, like it's just this big, healthy, you know, like you have nothing to worry about, then it's like, you know, just pure bliss. But like any other tree, I still get nervous, you know, I'm like,
No, the only question I had, and I think you just answered it quite nicely, actually, were the nerves a result of the fall, or was it natural, or was it just being in a bucket for the first time? Because I climbed for 10 years before I ever got in a bucket. And I remember taking the upper boom up and letting go of the control, and the boom flexed. I thought, is this thing going to flick me out? Like, it took me. And now we bought a lift recently.
Yeah. And which is,
like a spider lift?
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
They sway so much more. So much more.
And I have a natural, he doesn't have this, but I'm with you. I actually have an innate reverential fear of height that I still navigate.
Yeah.
And I've just learned to kind of channel. And I love how you said, I just started working. So that's kind of my thing. That's my coping skill. And I told my son yesterday, I was like, I'm working this big tree, and I've got the spider. It's a 90-footer, and I'm maxed, and I'm on this waterway. And two things that I find crazy about them: the wind's blowing, and the boom's doing this.
Yes.
And I'm like, holy shit.
And you look down, and from when you're up there all the way up, the spider legs look so much smaller than when you're on the ground. When you're on the ground, it's, you know, they're just as big as you are, and you know, it's like this wide 15-foot area, but you look down, and it's just like this tiny little thing, and you're swaying. You're like, I'm going to fall over. There's no way I'm going to fall over.
And it sounds like you've been in them, right? So the other thing that gets me is I'm trying to undercut and I put my saw in, and it pushes the whole friggin' boom away.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how quick we adapt. Like the other day, I was like, oh, I want to make this cut. So I had to like stretch. And once I cut in, it kind of pulled me toward it a little bit. So I was able to use it. But
you have to be really careful when you like take a top, because when the stick swings back and you're swinging towards it, you know, like. Yeah.
So no, it's cool that you, and like I said, you answered the question.
So there's a couple of things in there. One, the first thing is I love, and this is me. I love more than anything else in the world that anybody but you obviously went through a massive adversity. First thing is, when that adversity happened, you didn't wait until the adversity was over before you go back to do the thing that you want to do. You pivoted and went into a different aspect of the industry or something to still be like, you know what, I'm limited here, but I'm not over here. So I'm going to work on this until I'm able to get back to be doing this on this side. So that's number one. Love it.
Shout out to Steve, the owner of, I always pronounce his name wrong, Relia.
Okay.
But he very much helped push me in that direction. And, you know, super still thankful to him for that, you know, for like even having that be an option, and you know?
Absolutely. And to Steve's credit, but also you taking it, that is, I mean, that's kind of like the whole point of everything. It's like, you're going to deal with things. How are you going to deal with it is the question, you know?
Right.
And Paul and I were talking before you showed up about this victim mindset. That's not a victim. That's like, it happened to you. What are you going to do about it? And luckily you had Steve to kind of guide you through that process and give you option. So that's number one. Number two, I'm pretty sure there is no credit to anybody else. This is you, because you had fear come back, whether it's fear of heights, the injury and everything else. You had to come down, kind of recap the situation, and then, which is why I loved when you said your ego came in, because I tell them all the time, the ego is very important at the right time, which is very and it has very little time to shine, in my opinion, meaning it's not necessary a lot of the time. But you convinced your supervisor, and then you went back up in the bucket. You went all the way straight up, terrified, inside the bucket, white knuckling it. But I give you massive credit for that, and anybody that's doing this kind of stuff, massive credit, because ultimately that is the thing. That is how you make meaning out of life. Meaning, if you're always scared of something, you're never going to have true meaning or be fulfilled in life. That's all. Those are the things that I wanted to hammer home real quick. And then the third thing is more of a question. I'll let Paul jump in.
No, you're good.
The question is like, because the listeners didn't get to hear the extent of the injuries that you had and what it made you incapable of doing in the meantime. So we'll dive into that. But I love that you went there. I love that you went there, because that hit me right between the eyes too. Yeah. That indomitable spirit, you know, saying. But I don't want to interrupt that flow. No, that's fine. Yeah.
So we'll have you unpack the injuries, limitations, things like that, and then we can circle back to the because the first thing that popped into my head was was almost like fear management. And rather than me dictate and tell a story about how I overcome fear, that's another thing I want to ask you after you unpack the injuries. I don't want to lose it. I want to just put a pin in it. We'll come back and we'll talk about fear after that.
Got it. So do you understand the extent? Because I think it's important for the listeners to understand the extent of the injuries and the way you had to overcome. Because it's easy to say, well, I just did this and then I went back into it. But like...
Yeah, what happened to you when you fell?
Most of the damage was on my left arm. So the tree was on a hill and I fell with my back facing the downhill. I landed with my wrist and my chainsaw it was just hooked to my harness, and my chainsaw had wrapped under my butt, and it was the buffer between my butt and the ground, and the motor, the metal was cracked on the inside, and the doctors, they had said if the chainsaw hadn't been there to take the buffer, my spine would have looked just like my wrist did. And I 100% would be paralyzed.
Oh, shoot.
My chainsaw literally saved my ass.
Because the first thing I thought of was like, ow.
Yeah.
It saved me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
I very much love my topper saw.
Wow.
I'm sure you do.
Yes.
And the wrist, though, explain the wrist.
Yeah, so my wrist, it was, my hand was still facing the way that it was supposed to be, but it was like halfway up my arm, and where it should be was just like a rounded nub with like a little bone sticking out of the side. It took them 2 tries to put everything back in place, and then I had to have like a plate and screws, and then had problems with the plate and screws, and had to have it taken out. But my ring finger and my pinky were completely gone. They were dead. There was no feeling whatsoever, no movement. Pretty much to like halfway down my arm, this whole section was just dead. So a lot of the surgeries were on the ulnar nerve to get them working again. There were 11 surgeries on my arm total, and 2 in my stomach, because the impact, I hit so hard that basically like my insides got rearranged. So they had to like, I mean, not completely, like, not like, the human, like they weren't completely, right. But things were not where they were supposed to be. So it had to be fixed. And then I grew a lot of scar tissue, and it started causing problems. So they had to go in and like remove the scar tissue. There was 11 surgeries on my arm, 2 in my stomach. The bones inside my ears were displaced. So I had, and I had post-concussion syndrome. So I was very, like, I had to learn how to walk again, which the only reason why I did was my husband. Every single day he would come up and he'd be like, we're making it from the couch to the bathroom, And I was like, we're making it to the front door. And every single day, like once I got to my limit of like where I couldn't go anymore, he'd be like, take one more step, just one more, And then every day it was like, we're just getting one more step than we did yesterday. Like, then we made it to like the end of the front porch, then he got me to the mailbox, and then he got me to the end of the block. But like every single day he would come and be like, we're just taking one more step than we did yesterday. So
damn,
he got me going.
I want to reach for the tissues
again.
now. Seriously, like it's got me a little like, wow, that's powerful. The role that someone can play to be an encourager, We talk about that a lot, like in the podcast early on, just even in the industry, but to have that serious of a thing.
Yeah, because I was pretty, they told me I would never climb again. And like my first reaction is no, but that doesn't take away like that might actually be a thing.
The reality of
and
what you were dealing with.
Yeah. And so it was very easy to maybe just like slip into a depression on the couch, but like he was like, we're just making it one more step more than we did yesterday.
I'm sure there were probably some dark times, in your head, like that you had to kind of navigate through, like.
Yeah, of course, but you kind of just don't go there.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to hear because everybody deals with stuff, But that was the thing. So actually, this is a great segue. I don't know if you have anything, but like the thing that two things. It's getting back to that. In fact, we'll table the fear thing for now. So I want to just kind of peel back the onion a little bit on the. I don't know what we would call it, like the mechanism of when you say don't go there. Because I have issues. Everybody's got stuff, right? And there's times I feel like I'm slipping into the abyss. And I think it's human shit, right? Like,
agreed.
What is it about you, Athena, that allows you to possess this mechanism whereby which you won't go there. Like, I guess maybe it's an awkward way to phrase a question. Like,
no, I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. Like, how do you?
It's kind of a little, an entire childhood of being beat a lot.
Okay.
You know, you learn how to just shut some things out sometimes. Okay. I have a very, you know, it's not the best thing to just, you know, not deal with things, but sometimes in the moment to get through it, you have to.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I can't go there right now, or else I'm not going to have the energy to do what I need to do to get better. You know, like I can go there and be sad about it after, you know, but right now I can't.
I have this interesting thing. I mean, of course, I think it's interesting. I hope you find it interesting, because we talk a lot, and some of the writing I do, and Brick does the same thing. We use the trees and nature to kind of fuel our creativity a little bit. I almost think in some ways, and I'm going to use the table. I don't know if Ben can pick up on it, but like, you see this old wound, the tree was cut here.
Right.
And this wound exists. And then the tree grows over it. So it compartmentalizes it. So the wound is there. But sometimes we learn to kind of, when I hear you say, I can't go there now, and maybe this is how you do it, but this is how I kind of do it sometimes, and I'd love to hear your spin on this. I have a feeling and emotion, you know, sometimes I get this like stuff in the winter, like seasonal depression or whatever, right? And it's like, oh, poor me. But there's a job to do, so I can't deal with this now.
No.
So I kind of put it in a box and I stick it over here, and then I go to work.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like? Yeah,
same thing. Yeah. You know, because like when you're, like I said, when I went up in the tree, and I was like, then I just started working. You know, and that, you know, that's where my focus is. When I'm in a tree, everything else disappears.
Yep.
You know, yeah. I tend to, you know, maybe be a little bit mean sometimes when someone on the ground tries to talk to me when I'm in the tree, because I'm like, I literally do not care about anything else other than this tree right now, you know?
Yeah.
But like, cause everything else disappears, you know, even to the point where like the fact that you're 40 feet up, 50 feet up, you know, whatever is, you know, I feel like I'm on the ground doing stuff, you know, like I don't even realize that I'm like in a whole different world right now, you know, like
the arboreal world.
Yeah.
It's catharsis.
You know,
that's
so
what it is, man.
But because it's in those moments where you can't shut it out, you know, like say, you know, and anything's going on. You went to work that morning and you spilled your coffee and you had no coffee for the day and it pissed you off, and you're just like so focused on not having that coffee, and you're in the tree and you're thinking about that coffee, and you forgot that you like never clipped your second flip line, you know, like you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to be able to put whatever it is in the background, because like both your life and the life of your crew members were, you know, everybody, your lives rely on each other, from the ground guy to the guy in the tree. Anyone could cause anything to happen, you know?
Yeah. Wow. It's deep. It's heavy. Yeah. It's good, man.
No, listen, when I say I love it, I don't mean, you know what I mean? Obviously, it sounds like you have an upbringing that was a challenging one. But once again, back to a point earlier, you took the mechanisms that you learned from that and being able to apply it to your adversities that came later.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, you know what I mean? Most people are like, oh, how do you get strong? That's kind of what you're asking. Like, how did you get strong to get through this? And if it's fair to fit it, but unfortunately, there's an upbringing part that created that ability for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of, I have a similar way. It's a little bit different, but being deaf and then having to be mainstream, it's sucked. Like, terrible. Like, you know, my mom's probably gonna hear this and, you know, have a couple of tears and stuff, but it's awful. I've
heard your story like a couple of times, you know, like
and I appreciate that. So
did you listen to it on the podcast?
I did listen to it on the podcast, but I've heard it like in person at conferences too.
That's awesome.
And what Paul's asking is like, where does that come from? You disclosed it, but in a way like this here, compartmentalizing it, you turn it into a strength.
Right, because if you're always focusing on the, like this happened, but if you just only focus on that, like say, I go to school, say something happens in the morning and then I go to school, I can't be like focused on that because then my grades are going to go down and then it's going to be worse, like you just have to learn how to just, I don't know.
And it's, we're going to get there at some point, but, and I won't say that's not normal, but I feel like there are two mindsets, and Brick and I talk about this often just in personal interactions. And before you got here, we were even going down this road about, and Mark Chisholm on episode, what would be 2, but he was our first guest, talked about victim mentality and how he's like, I remember if emphatically, almost like pounding the desk, not quite, but was like, I'm not a fan of victim mentality. I see a lot of it. And sometimes, I like how Goggins puts it, you can get poopy pants. Yeah. Like sometimes for a minute, it's okay to go, damn it. Like,
I've totally had my moments.
Like this broke, son of a, and you just, and what we have to learn to do is kind of like shorten that time. Like, but it's not always, I'm not going to say it's special, but you have two ways you can go, and you've chosen, I'm grateful that you're here, because I mean, having someone I didn't know, you're trying to like, how's the conversation going to go? We have no idea.
Yeah, same thing. I was like, I know him, but I don't know you. Like,
but no, I love this, and we're discovering this about you, is that you're not adopting a victim mindset. You acknowledge it. These are the things. These are the limitations. This is broken. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to learn what I can. Growth is happening even in the midst of this trauma that's happened. And now you're like, all right, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to make this work. And I just really think it's important, because every single body, and it's funny, you're talking about your wrist. I smashed my hand in a machine, the processor out there, and I had a pin in my finger, and I was like, I was almost embarrassed, because I'm like, she got a whole wrist and a body and 17 surgeries. I busted my finger. I'm just going to let this park here. I'm not going to say anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny, but what I'm saying is, it's cool that you stayed in a growth mindset and that you pivoted out of it. And I just really think it's important for just any random person listening to know they're not alone in whatever they're dealing with, whether it's stuff they dealt with as a kid or stuff they're dealing with now, that life ain't easy and it's messy.
Kind of expanding on that point, that was when you asked me earlier what in the conversation with Kevin, kind of drew me into it. I could tell even just from the conversation with him, the tree industry, like when you go to the conferences or, even just learning situations, the classes, like everybody's very open to, there's 5 different ways that we can do this. Like, isn't that exciting? Like I don't care who you are. Let's just talk about like this cool thing over here, and just getting excited about, the actual thing itself as compared to like, I don't know, you're only 5 feet tall, so you can't, I don't know. It's very open. I'm not wording this correctly at all, and the more I'm trying, the worse it's getting.
No, it's all good.
That was all good. Yeah.
But like,
I get it.
I don't know. It's the industry, but there's 2 different sides to it too, because
100%.
the guys that you're working with, like you can run into a lot of difficulties, but every time you go to the conferences, it's like so much more friendly.
There's a definite dichotomy that exists.
100%.
Definite dichotomy. I feel like those that pursue higher learning, that pursue the arborist mindset, that pursue growth just as a person. And this is what Brick's big into. And we touched on this earlier in another episode, was like, it's like, how does personal development have anything to do with like tree work? Well,
everything.
Thank you. I say thank you because I agree with. First of all, I'm assuming the listeners know this already.
Yes.
But please elaborate like your insight on that, because I just don't feel like you're not doing anything in life without you being there. So why wouldn't it be a part of the process? Yeah. So I don't know if you have insight on why you feel the personal development part is crucial to being the arborist person in the industry.
I think it's crucial because of the point that I said, that everybody's lives literally rely on each other. You know, like if your ground guy was out partying till 3:00 in the morning and he's half drunk and not paying attention, and he doesn't let the rope run when he's supposed to, and it smashes your foot or something, you know, like you have to be able to pay. There's not really small accidents in tree work, you know, like when things happen, they happen on a bigger, more serious scale, you know, and if you're going to be able to have that level of focus, you have to not be partying till, 3:00 in the morning. You have to, know if it's going to be 90 degrees the next day. Before you go to bed, drink some extra water so that way you're already hydrated and you're not going to pass out at noon, like.
Love that.
Not that you always remember and you're always perfect or anything like that, but if you don't if you're not on top of those things, the job sucks. And it's a million times more difficult. And even if it's not you, if it's somebody else, then it puts the extra strain on the other people, and then
Agreed.
It causes like heads to butt and, and you never want that to be you, No. It's just, I don't know. I feel like in order to do the job safely, you have to, like, tree work isn't a job, it's a lifestyle.
I will say, I'll add to that. And that was well said too.
She's got some gems. She's just dropping gems. I love it. It's awesome.
To add to that is, to do it safely, you have to show up as the best version of yourself.
Yeah. That's a much better, easier way to put it.
But you were going in that direction. That you gave me the thought, but it's literally, that's why I dive into that, because like and this is kind of like more personal, but people I work with, one of the people I pretty much had a pretty deep conversation, but in the conversation, he's an older person, super cool dude, but he wants out. He's like, I can't help with the tree department anymore. I'm too stressed out. Which is fine, you know what I mean? But the thing you said to me was that I was like, I have a standard for a reason. And it's a high standard, you know what I mean? He goes, yeah, it's too high. And I was like, well, what do you mean too high? He was like, because you're like one of the best. And everybody has a hard time being up to that standard. I'm like, well, hold on. Do you understand why the standard is high? And he goes, no. I'm like, because, and this being more environment, but because you can die.
Yeah.
Like, I have the standard so high, and I'm trying to even push it up higher if I can, because ultimately, every time I approach the job with, let's say the three of us go to work, and I show up the best version of myself, the standard being that high, we're going to pick up on those little nuances. We're going to see all these things way better if we're on point and upholding the standard than we're not. What does that do? That increases the safety factor for you to do your job safely, correctly, and it's the cliche. Everybody gets to go home and we're safe, but it's literally the whole point.
Yeah.
So when that's, you know what I mean? So
being hurt sucks, like.
And you can, and that's why sharing the story about that, that's what it's about. It's not about, well, she did this wrong, well, he could have done that. And No,
how do we figure out how to not make that happen again?
Thank you.
You know,
and
like,
yes, and more importantly, I want to say this. More importantly, there's a physical part. Tie this off, do this, whatever. But then there is the personal development part. Not to say that you weren't at that point or whatever, but what did you learn from that? And we just heard in the last half an hour that who you are when you're a child, you have this and you do this and you want to. We see that, and that's what we love about doing this podcast is you start to see the person come out, not the tree worker, the person coming through. And I know this about you because we met and we got to meet a couple of times. You have the strong soul, strong person, and that is who's showing up every time, as best as we can be the best version of ourselves. Meaning we have bad days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It happens. But I'm trying my best every day.
Yeah.
So if my standard is high for you, that means you should be going that direction, but also understand it's high so that we can do this as safe as possible and go home. People that work in the office, you should have a high standard, but it really doesn't matter if you don't, because nothing's going to happen. Maybe carpal tunnel, but that's about it.
Yeah, bad.
So,
posture or whatever. No, it's, there are certain trades, certain industries, certain jobs where your literal life is on the line. And in our case, on a line a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy having to navigate. It's as you're expounding on it and going through it. Of course, sometimes when I watch the podcast, I get a little mad at myself that I relate. We talked about the show that I relate things through myself because I don't want this to be a podcast about Paul. It's about the guests that show up. But the last few weeks, I've had to navigate around. I won't even call it a bad attitude because it's not like a bad, angry, grumpy attitude. I don't know if it's stress. I'm not sure all what it is, but just showing up on some of these jobs and having to navigate around my own psychology. That's been not great. For whatever reason. But, I'm 42 years in, 32 years in business, blah, blah, blah. I had a bad experience with a client a week ago that kind of like knocked me sort of off my center. But I've employed what you spoke about, where I show up and I'm like, okay, I use a thing like 1 foot in front of the other. So it's like, okay, park the truck. Okay. Put the cones out.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let me get my cones out. Okay. Now I'm physically moving. Get the hard hat on. Okay. What do I have to do? All right, let's get the lift in. Okay. And I said to Mason, he's like, you all right? And I'm like, give me like 30 minutes. And once I get into the groove and the flow of the work, and I'm lining my tasks up single file. And I'm just, that for me strategically was a way that I was able to navigate around this conundrum that is my mind right now. So, you guys relate?
Yeah.
Is that how you kind of, because it sounds to me like you got my wheels turning, describing how I used to say like, we bring our bag of crap, whatever it is, and we set it at the base of the tree.
Yeah.
And we leave it there.
You have to.
And then we go to work. Yeah.
So we started off at the beginning of the podcast with that you're a mom. The 18-year-old boys.
17.
17.
Twins,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, twins, which is awesome. Gonna graduate this year, right?
Correct.
Graduate high school. They both help you with tree work.
Yes.
Yeah, right? Which is awesome.
Yes.
With the kind of just getting right to the point, my mom had me when she was 18, and I was asking you about when you had the kids.
I was 19.
Yeah, so you're 19. So the reason why I'm asking is, what spurred the whole thought was you had the injury. You had your kids when you had the injury, right?
Yes.
How old were your kids then?
So the accident happened 2016. They were born 2007, so 9.
Yeah, see, there you go. So because while you were telling the story, that was one of the things I'm like, oh man, you also had your kids at this time. So it's not only, because that back to the personal development, it's not only like get back into becoming, David Goggins, work through the pain, get back in the trees, the doctor's doing. It's also like for your kids,
making breakfast.
You got little kids that are relying on you. Same with you, same with myself. We have kids, as we go through adversity, we have people actually called dependents that are dependent on you, regardless of what you're going through, you know? I wanted to touch on that because I feel like an ode to my mom being young, having me young, and her fighting spirit is the spirit that I have as well. And I've met your sons, and I can just see that. First of all, I told him that they're big dudes.
Yeah,
they're awesome. Big dudes for being teenagers. But cool. I love it, and I love that
they're like almost 6'5" now.
Wow,
that's it. I know.
They're tall.
Yeah, both of them.
That's damn big.
Yeah, they're tall. They're like a size freaking 14 shoe. They're very tall.
Yeah.
Costs a lot to feed those boys. That's the first thing I think of. This Mason, he grazes. It's like yesterday, I'm like, you want to take a little break for lunch? He's like, well, truth be told, I kind of already ate most of my lunch. I'm like, of course you did. Because he's like noshing the whole time.
All the time, yeah. So I just wanted to kind of dive in there, and maybe for some listeners that are women in the industry, I know I'm trying to remember. I feel bad. I forget the name already. At the competition, she just had a baby. She was a couple months old.
You're not thinking of Nicole, are you?
No. I feel bad. It's gonna hit me. It's not Star. Star is another one who's in Texas. Same thing. Badass. You know what I mean? Had the baby, got back, climbing, competition scene. I love it. It's a really cool thing. Anyways, my point is, for listeners listening, there are people listening that you are an inspiration to, not only because of the tree work, but as a mother as well. So,
I'll be honest with you. Like, I think if guys can get their heads like around the whole female thing, it's like they're doing this. Like I can remember like Raina, like doing yard work and stuff, full like 8 months pregnant, 9 months riding bikes and I'm just like doing everything we're doing, and the kid's on the hip kind of thing. So, there's a toughness there that shouldn't be overlooked in my mind, but that's just the way I view life,
Definitely had to bring them on a lot of jobs with me, in like once you start, everybody starts doing tree work kind of like on their, you always do side jobs basically.
Yeah.
And so I would bring them with me, and about like 7-8 years old that, they started that, like they were coming with me to work. They could last maybe about 2 hours. They'd get $20 each, and it was 2 hours before they'd be fighting with each other too much, or, like this and that and the other. And then, as their age increased, the time that they could focus and do things and learn things increased. And then the amount that they were paid increased, and then, got to the point where I could start bringing them to the, all the events with me, like TCIA and like all the expos and the, so they do the classes, they get like, because usually at the expos you can, there's, like you can try out different saddles and different things, so they'll go and they'll get like set up and try different ways of doing things. And then we'll go home and we'll set it up and try different things. We'll put a rope up in a tree and tie it, to another tree and have someone be up in the saddle. And it's like 2 ropes. We'll put a rope up into a tree that you're going to use as a swing. And then in a second tree over somewhere else, you put another rope. So that way you're just hanging in the saddle. You could grab the other rope, pull yourself up as high as you can go, and then just have just make a big swing, but
nice.
Before, when they were younger, they didn't really have the arm strength to go up pretty high, so you could use it to pull them and make them go a little bit higher. But so learning how to just like, even setting up that rigging system, like, all right, you're going to need 2 different ropes. Like, where are you going to put it? Where would be the best place? And now they're 17 and they do basic climbing. They, when they were 16, I got them their first chainsaws, that was super exciting to get them, you know, they both had their first chainsaws and they
chainsaw.
You know, they were, well, so like I brought them on jobs with me, and I don't remember what age it was, maybe just before teenage years, like 11, 12-ish, kind of the age my stepson is now. He's 13. They lost interest in working. Like they didn't, it was, you know, cause it's hard, you know, and they're little kids. They're doing all the groundwork. They're literally just dragging brush all day long, you know, like maybe sometimes I'll let them use a handsaw if I'm right next to them. But, you know, like for the most part, they're dragging brush and just lifting logs, you know, like, and raking. So they lost interest in doing hard work, and they didn't want to come to jobs anymore. And I didn't force them. I was like, all right, you know, whatever. It is what it is. And after a couple of years, maybe not even a couple of years, a little over a year, you know, they needed money for something. They were like, can I come to work? You know, and I was like, sure, you know, and then they realized that they're older and they can do more things and they make more money, you know, and they actually like tree work. My one son, Sebastian, he's way more interested into getting into climbing and not necessarily takedowns, because, you know, they saw what I went through when I fell, and they've seen, you know, other coworkers that have gone through accidents, and just like how serious, you know, so he doesn't necessarily want to get into like big takedowns right away. He would like to just kind of stick to pruning, but he loves climbing, you know, so he wants to do it and be a little bit, ease into it more. So he wants to get more into climbing and pruning. And Alexander is way more interested in like the science and the chemicals and the plants and the you know, fungi and everything like that. So he wants to get more into the plant healthcare. So it's really cool. So like one day, you know, I could like focus more on climbing aspects with Sebastian, or focus more on plant healthcare with Alexander. I make them both do both, regardless. Just one, you know, gets a little bit more into it. You know, like if we're at an event and there's two separate classes, and one's plant healthcare, one's climbing, you know, then they'll separate, you know. But I make sure overall they both end up seeing the classes, you know, eventually. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, so I love working with my kids. And then, you know, they're in high school now, they're seniors. So their friends also need money and are like, you know, I've never seen tree work before. And like, your mom climbs trees, you know, so like they want to come. So like they'll come and work, you know, and so it's like, I get to work with like my kids and their friends and just be a part of their lives and have it be their choice. You know, like, I don't know. I love working with my kids.
Listen, I've said it before because I have that experience. There's been several times when we would split into two crews and I would take my 3 kids. So it was like me, my 2 daughters, and Mason. And we go out and just, I'm up there and I'm raining down brush and like, it's just, and we're not even speaking.
Yeah, no.
It's just like, boom, there's this inner family weird like communication thing, and having grown up in it, and I never thought much about and I've touched on this before, I never thought much about I'm second generation. I'm like, why do people feel the need to mention that? And now I see it like, because we have a few people within our Jersey chapter of ISA, we've got several families where the dad started the business and the kids are now working. And when I see the intuitive nature, it's with them coming out with you at that young age, and their brains are so much more absorbent and dynamic.
Right.
They're just soaking it in. I've had my kids, and I'm like, how did you know how to do that? Oh, well, I remember once you showed me and I was like 6, and I'm like,
okay.
Wow. Okay. Exactly. I'm like, wow. All right. So there really is something to it. And I agree. There's nothing that brings me more joy than working with my kids. The only thing, and I don't know, maybe you have this, I'm sure you do, especially too, because you're a mom, but like, some days when it's tough, or there's like we're working on a project right now with some massive trees, and like even if a log falls over sideways and like it could hurt somebody.
Yeah.
So sometimes I go to myself, what kind of
like,
parent
lets
their kids do this?
Why am I having them do this with me? Yeah.
Like if anything ever happened to him, I wouldn't be able to deal with myself.
Yeah. I
but yet it's also super joyful.
Yeah. You couldn't be more proud and more scared at the same time.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So do you have anything? Because I want to pivot to...
No,
I want to kind of just touch, because you mentioned, you triggered a thought when you said, your mom climbs trees. Yeah. So let's dig into the female arborist thing, right? It's almost like another little shout out to Bartlett, because when I worked at a Bala Cynwyd office over in PA, and that was back in 89, 90, there was a female arborist. So she won their like sort of inner regional arborist of the year.
Okay.
I think her name was Kathy, if I remember correctly. But yeah, male dominated field. Bartlett opened their doors to you, right? Like it was just like, hey, you can do this. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Right. And it doesn't sound to me like, when we were talking before, you talked about a township or a borough or a job you had where it was male dominated, and you came in as a boss and there was like friction and tension, and you're a woman, and any of that there at Bartlett, like it seems like they have a pretty good way of like just integrating women right in, right? Is this a fair statement?
Bartlett, I didn't run into any of that. Bartlett, the focus was more learning.
Cool.
You know, like you said, just there's all the books. Like every single morning meeting, everyone stands around, or I think maybe it wasn't every single morning. I think twice a week. Okay. Maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays were morning meeting days. And I've said this to people before, and they say it sounds, you know, like horrible, or maybe like it would be embarrassing or something, but say something happened. Say there was a near miss or an actual accident happened or something like that. The person that made the mistake, per se, they're the one, like everybody stands in a circle and, you know, they kind of take a step forward, and they're the ones that have to explain what happened and like what went wrong. And a lot of people have said, well, that sounds like it would be, you know, everyone just like embarrassing and everyone reprimanding, but it never was. It was always a very open, like, I'm explaining to you what I did, so that, like you were saying before, it's just learning how to not do it again, you know, sort of thing. And everybody would just sit there and talk about it and be like, oh yeah, I did that too, like 5 years ago, or I just did that the other week, or, you know, like it happens. So it was a very at the expos feel, where it, you know, the whole purpose of being there is to learn how to do it better. You know, cool. So that was pretty cool. It was more, it didn't matter, you know, what race you were, or if you were a female, or, you know, it just, your work is what mattered.
Good. Yeah. Have you felt being, and just point blank, like, have there been issues as a woman in a male dominated field that you had to navigate around, like at some other places, or
very much so,
or like when you get, I mean, is there anything you want to like unpack, or like some of those friction points where you're like, dude, like really, like, you know,
it's, sometimes it can be very difficult. I mean, I've literally had guys rip my hard hat off my head and throw it into the woods and be screaming in my face. I've had guys take a chainsaw out of my hand and tell me no, you know, or if I was the foreman for the day, and I'm like, all right, this is the way we're going to do it, you know, and no, you know, just go and sit in the truck and refuse to work, you know, because they wouldn't work under a female, you know.
We call them boys.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. You run into,
it's true.
You know,
it's kind of, people are either like, they don't know how to handle it. Like I go to lift a heavy log and they're like, no, I'll get that for you. Or no, that's too heavy. And I'm like, can you just go lift that piece over there so I can get this one? You know,
you take
like,
care of you.
Know,
and if I need help, I'll ask.
You know, it's I do run into that a lot, where it's kind of difficult for a guy to see a girl doing hard labor. You know, like that's the most question that I get asked. That's the question that I get asked the most when people ask me what I do, you know, for a living, and I'm like, I climb trees, and they're like, isn't that hard work? Like, that's the first thing people say to me 9 out of 10 times. Isn't that hard? You know?
Like, yes,
like,
it is.
Like, couldn't you find something easier?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I love doing it. I don't know. I'm from the Midwest, like hard work is originally.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm from everywhere.
I like that. There you go. Yeah, from everywhere.
Yeah, we moved every 2-3 years. But originally I'm from Indiana.
Yeah. So you definitely got the hard work mentality.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I'll just add. I'd like to jump in, and this is me speaking to the listeners as well. You touched on it perfectly. They're called boys. For whatever reason, in the last couple of years, in my way of trying to figure out how to categorize people and as to why they behave certain ways, I broke it down to this. It literally comes down to, are you a girl or a woman or a boy or a man? And not in any way of like, well, you it had nothing to do with that. It's just the idea that you developmentally where you're at. So right off the bat, what you said, I hear what you said, and it's terrible. That's part of the experience, but that's the boy. That's the boy that rips your helmet off, throws it in the woods. Like, but if I was it's not good. And I'm being honest. This has nothing to do with you being a woman. The fact that you have passion of being in this industry, regardless of what you are, I'm good with it. So I would talk to him like, yo, what's your problem? Well, you choose a girl, blah, blah, whatever. And I'm like, no, you're being a boy. You have insecurity. You need to look in the mirror. You have a problem. The question is, if she has a job to do and she can't do the job, she asks for help, fine. If she has a job to do and doesn't do the job and puts it on everybody else, as we talked about now, and makes everybody else work harder, then we have a problem with the person.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why you're like, they're called boys. You're correct.
Well,
that's
yeah,
exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when, I'm just, again, this is just the way my mind relates. I had an issue a week ago where a man came out and was giving me grief because he felt the vibration of the tree hit the ground in his house. 76-year-old guy comes out and he's like ranting at me and he's almost spit flying. And I was like, and I just looked at him. I was like, why the anger? Why are you so angry?
Because the whole foundation to my house is gone now.
Right. Well, the first thing I thought, I was able to remain calm. Anyway, I saw him as a 76-year-old man. He was a much older man than me. And I'm like, but he still is acting like a child. And so it's more a reflection. And I've learned this over time. And because in the past, I would have come back with similar energy, where I might raise my tone and because I was still dealing with some boy stuff, right? Like you're always growing. And now it's like, look, man, but a lot of times that bad behavior is a reflection on, I'd say most times, oftentimes it's a reflection of where they are. It's something in them, if it's people, I would say men behaving badly, but if it's people behaving badly and the energy doesn't match the situation, oftentimes it's something on their end. 100%. It's internal. It's
kind of like that difference between, just a tree guy company and an arborist company,
Yep.
The arborist company would be way more open-minded to be like, I don't care that you're a girl. I care that you can do the job. If you can do the job, great. If you can't, then you can't. But kind of going to that, like the 9 out of 10 times, the first question I get, like, isn't that hard? I feel like it's kind of very hard for a guy to accept that a girl could do the job. Like most of the time, I'm not taken very seriously at first. Not until I can start explaining the science behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, or they actually get to work with me for a day or two, or they actually can see me in the tree, or, then, whatever. But there's always that little window where I have to prove myself first. I can't just walk into the crew and just be another guy that's going to come help them with the job. Right. I have to first navigate through this window of you accepting that I can even do the job. Yep. And then, we can talk about science.
Interesting when you say that, because the way my mind went was, in my world, no one gets to walk in. Everybody's got to. Doesn't matter what your gender is. Like, you're not coming into my space and going, I can do. I'm going, okay, here's the ticket. We'll evaluate as we go. It's got nothing to do with. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? It's like the fact
it's all about the mindset. Yes. But then again, you have like a tree crew with a tree crew of 3 guys sitting over there. A girl comes walking up to them and is like, all right, let's go do the job. But they're going to look at each other and be like, what? But if the guy, another guy comes up and is like, hey, let's do the job. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So we talked about this before, and there's what I was saying before, the collective agreement. And the idea of a collective agreement is just overall, everybody kind of agreed over time, like your great grandparents, and it just came to a point. Women just did not work in the tree industry in the 1700s. I'm just throwing a number out, but it's just not a thing. So the collective agreement is this is what men do. So when it became where females can be a part of the industry, the collective agreement is still there.
Yeah, lumberjack is, the guy with the big beard and the flannel shirt and the axe, not a mom.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that being said, I'm with you, Amelia, but we talked about this before. I'm the person that everybody has to come in. They can they can have all these shiny trinkets. They can have, the best gear. They can talk the game. I know this and I know that, but okay, let's get to the field and find out. Equally, that'd be great. But the collective agreement is usually when a female shows up to the scene, and this is the boys coming through. In my opinion, a man is somebody who's put the work in, can embrace both the masculine and feminine without any weirdness about it, right? It doesn't matter who shows up. They still have to prove themselves, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Everybody across the board has to prove. But the collective agreement is still the boy mindset.
I get it.
Of the male-dominated industry. And that's when it's like... that shouldn't, and again, I understand both sides. Like, I get the collective agreement because I'm going back to 1700s. That's just how it was. I'm not mad about that. I can't be mad about that. But what I am mad is that it's 2025 and you're acting like you're in the 1700s. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to your point, solid, but it's still, and I understand your point, it's still a factor of the collective agreement.
100%.
That's where the ego is harmful and not helpful.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because
it's just kind of and it's funny because, all right, they're evaluating a woman, right? Saying, oh, and like Michaela is tiny, my daughter, right? And it's like, if she went on some random cruise, like, But the way I look at it is everybody that comes to there's diversity within men too, right? If some 6'5" young buck comes on a job.
Who are we talking about?
What I'm going to say is there are going to be skill sets within the dynamic, right?
Yeah.
One guy's got maybe the climber physique, and another person is a bull, and you're like, well, that guy can probably lift a lot, and so we accept that diversity of skill and physique and body type within like the male side of it, but we're not. It's just interesting. It's just got my mind kind of like, like you were, because Athena was saying like, there's 3 dudes there and all of a sudden a woman comes up, she's carrying her gear and they're kind of like, bro. But realistically, it should be like you're assessing anybody. Which is where it should be. But what you're saying, that's the ideal, right?
But the collective agreement should be at that point.
Yes.
Not still in the 1700s. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Because if it's at that point, whoever shows in the door is equally assessed.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? We're not there yet.
Yeah.
It's just not. That's just the reality.
And it goes beyond even just like the tree work, though. Because you grew up, your mom is like making the meals and. That's not necessarily the way the world is today. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more, both parents take on a lot more of the roles, but 20 years, a lot of people in our generation grew up different, and the woman doesn't really do the physical labor stuff, so it's kind of like an ingrained thing that's hard for some guys to be able to accept. I feel like a lot of the younger generation, they may be more open to like letting a girl do it, but they're not gonna listen to anything you have to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask you, I guess kind of the next phase that is like listening to how you navigated challenges that you've already done and how you came back from the injury, right? What do you, Athena, as a person, do with all that? Because he and I talked about like victim mentality, right? It doesn't, just walk me through, like in other words, you don't seem like you would play like the victim card. You seem like you would sort of like pull your pants up and just have at it. Just be like, okay, this is my gear. Like, what's the project? And do. So how do you handle that? Like when that comes at you, what's your mindset strategically? How do you, in other words, you're in a male dominated thing where this old agreement works and you're just like, Papa, I like this. I'm doing it, whatever. Right. So, help me out. I think like, how do you?
Well, I think you said it though. Like basically, when it happens, how do you deal with it? I mean,
you have to. It's very, very, very difficult because my first reaction is that I want to get right back up in their face,
right?
And can't really do that when you're at work, So my first reaction is that I just need to get away from the situation. I can't have a response or react because if I do, it's not going to be good and it's going to be bad for in front of the customer. It's going to be bad for the company. It's not going to be a good image, leave a good reputation. Who knows if that's the one. It takes 5 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to lose it, So just so my first reaction is mostly that I just need to get away from the situation. And then from there, how it's handled completely depends on the company and the supervisor or the boss, because this is a situation that needs to be handled. And if it's not handled, then it's not the right environment for me, and I'll go to another, there's other options, but if the supervisor, actually sits down and figures out what happened and holds people accountable for their actions, because there's been plenty of time, like the one job that I was telling you where the dude told me no and went and sat in the truck and refused to work. I called.
So what did you do there? Did you press on and just execute the job, or did you?
I let him go. He just went and sat in the truck. I called my boss. I was like, listen, this is what just happened. He's literally sitting in the truck right now, just doing nothing.
And what was that person's role? What were they supposed to do? So like on that job, were you like the climber?
I was
on
the
job?
foreman.
Okay. So you're running the project. What was that person's duties? Like what were their job? Ground person or kind of?
Well, we were all ground. We were working at IBM.
Okay.
And they have a lot of gas pipes that go through the woods, like these big gas pipes. And it's very important.
Did you say big gas pipes or big ass pipes?
I wasn't. Either one could have worked
for the listeners. Sorry.
I did say gas, but they are big ass pipes.
Okay, cool. All right, and, just clarification,
but they're through like acres of woods, and it is very important that branches don't grow into or fall onto those pipes. So our job was to, we were just walking through walking the pipes through the woods and just clearing everything that needed to be cleared,
right away,
basically.
Type stuff.
You know, so he just fresh out of, just fresh out of BOCES, has his degree, knows everything about everything.
Of course.
And the other ground guy is learning the chainsaw. He's not really the best at it. He hasn't done pretty much any felling, anything like that. And there were some trees that we needed to fell. So, I mean, the role was just stay near each other so nobody gets hurt and kind of just focus on clearing. So there wasn't really a like, you're specifically a feller, you're on the ropes, just you don't even know what situations you're going to be walking into as you're walking down the pipes, So I was trying to teach the one guy. It came to a point where we needed to fell a tree. I was like, hey, you want to do it? So I'm like going through the notch with him and, we're getting it all set up and, stood right by his side and he did the notch and getting ready to do the back cut. And that's when the other guy came over to see what we were doing. And he was like, no, you can't do it. If you drop the tree that way, it's going to fall right on the line. It's going to, like he thought the entire way that I had it set up was completely wrong and it wasn't going to work. And literally took the chainsaw away. And it was like, we're not doing this, and, so, but after he went in the truck, we made the cut and it went the way that it was supposed to go and everything was fine and, whatever. But he was so convinced that he knew what he was doing and that the way that I was going to do it was not going to work at all whatsoever. And, it was, I ran into a bunch of problems with him in the beginning, because he would fight me even on where the root collar was, like he was fresh out of school and he knew way better. Didn't matter that I've been doing this for however many years or, I'm a girl and he knows more than me, very, very masculine, type of thing. But over the years of just, as he's learned more, we ended up getting along, like at the end, we ended up getting along, but it was very difficult. And that window of just being able to be taken seriously with him lasted very long. But so the best way I can handle it is to just take myself out of the situation and put it into the hands of, my supervisor. And if the supervisor handles it correctly, then we can all learn from it and grow from it and go from there. But if the supervisor doesn't know how to handle situations like that, it's,
that's where the environment.
It is what it is. Yeah.
The environment. It doesn't. Municipalities are notorious for not using accountability. Or applying accountability, and that's where you usually have all the problems, which we were talking about earlier. But
like me, I'm just going to continue working. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm not doing this right now. We still need to get this job done. Like I maybe being a waitress for so long, like when you're a waitress, there's like a million different side tasks that you have to do before your shift, before you're allowed to leave, like you have to do all your work stuff, but you also got to like roll silverware, or it's your job to do, these counters or, the salad bar and so my focus was always, when my shift is over, I want to go home. Like, not that I want to go home. I have to go home. I had the kids. I had, like I can't just stay an extra 2 hours doing my side work. So from the moment I got there, I would start setting things up. So it was either done or all I had to do was just touch it up real quick. So when my shift was over, I could leave. So when I go into tree work, the same way, like I want, what's most important to me is to get it done correctly, to leave the job looking, immaculate. And get out of there. Like I love doing tree work, but I also, love my kids and my home and my husband, well. I want to go home. No,
that makes a lot of sense.
I kind of lost track of.
No,
we were, and what I, just to touch.
Yeah, I'm going to say, go for it. Natural response would be anger.
Yeah.
you remove yourself from the situation. You hand it over to management supervisor, and hoping that the job place has a good environment. They handle situations.
And then I'll just finish the job. That's where I was going with that. There's been, I can't even tell you how many times where I was there till dark, just finishing everything by myself, because the other guys were, I'm not doing this. I'm going home. And I stayed there and finished,
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say one thing, little aside story. I had a guy throw a tantrum on a job one time. I was like, take me home. I'm in Cherry Hill. I'm 30 minutes from the job site, and I'm taking a big tree down.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went, like, I kind of laughed. And I was like, you can go sit in the truck, or you can call an Uber. I really don't care what you do. Your man tantrum, whatever it is you're doing right now, it's not a part of this project. Just go over there and get out of my way.
Yeah.
And so, where was I going with that? Oh, and so it's either fight or flight, right? We hear that all the time. So your thing is like, okay, I can either fight or I can just remove myself. And if that gives you an opportunity, conflict resolution wise, to take a breath and figure out your strategy, right? You step away. It's like, okay, I got to deal with this idiot now. But I still have this ticket I have to do. And then you have to navigate that. But it's better to take yourself out of it than get dragged into a conflict. So I think that's, in that situation, flight is a little bit of definitely a better, not a little bit, it's a better solution to give yourself that space in between of, like we always call it, responsibility, right? We have the ability to respond. So it's in that gap in between the conflict, which is like a stimulus. It kind of like smacks you in the face and you feel something. And we can either react to that feeling or kind of separate, take a breath, and come up with a solution that's not involved in like that emotional response. Because I want to.
Because once you go to the emotional response, it's getting out of it.
It's hard to reel it back.
And it's usually there's a lot of screaming and throwing things and
Same here. I'll be always happy to tell my experience. Municipality, again, same thing. I've had people leave the job site like, I'm not helping you. I'm like, all right, like, don't help me. So
it's fine.
Climb the tree by myself, stack the wood by myself, call my supervisor, have him pick me up.
Shouldn't be climbing by yourself.
And guess what? Too bad. I do it anyway. Because I love what I do so much. You're not going to have me not do the thing that I want to do. Unfortunately, even if it meant that there's a risk aspect to it. But I want this so bad. I'm not putting myself in a position where to let other people dictate if it's going to happen or not.
Right. I'm not going to let you win, basically, is what it comes down to. It's like, you want to go home. Go for it. What do you want me to do? Oh, no, please don't leave, bro. Go. Start hitchhiking, call an Uber, have your mommy pick you up. I really don't care.
That's where the ego is good.
You know what I'm saying? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, it ain't happening.
No. So you, and I just want to make sure the listeners here, it is correct. Climbing by yourself is not the best idea. Fully understood.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. Exactly.
Do not do this.
Please.
I mean, make sure the customer's there, neighbor, somebody. Just don't be,
because this is an educational podcast as well.
Yeah.
But no, the point of sharing the story is, I want to put, and I'm not a violent person. I don't think so. But if necessary.
But you're capable of it.
I think so. But my point is, I want to jack somebody in the mouth.
Yeah.
Like, you're being fully,
this wants you, right?
Fully disrespectful for whatever, to the point of the conversation, race, gender, this and that. You're fully being disrespectful for no cause. Meaning, what? Tell me why. What happened?
Because it hurts their ego.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, like, whoever shows up in the room, what happened for you to be disrespectful to me?
Right. Let's figure it out.
You know
so that way we can fix it.
Well, the problem is we can't figure it out. Meaning, like, what? Like, for example, if I smack Paul, I know it sounds crazy, but if I smack Paul in the face, he has a reason to be upset. I disrespected him by smacking him. But if I didn't smack him and I act a certain way towards him, he's gonna say, "What is this? Nothing happened." So why is there a reaction or a response to nothing happening? Meaning, let me mess up first before you talk to me in a certain way.
Right.
It's boundaries, man.
It's boundaries.
And to me, it's human boundaries. And this is where it's an interesting dichotomy that, or I guess maybe that's the word. I don't even know. But it's like there's the way I view life, but then there's the reality of life. Like you and I were talking about race earlier, and I was like, quoting the Viktor Frankl book about there are two races of men, the decent and the indecent. Yeah. That's the, what's the word you use? The collective agreement.
Oh, the collective agreement.
That should be the collective agreement.
100%.
But people bring all this other hodgepodge in, but also it does exist. So like I was explaining to you, like I just deal with people as people, and you prove through engagement, conversation, association, kind of where you fall, whether you're a decent, indecent, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, in your world, you are dealing with rubs out there because of your race, and you're dealing with rubs out there because of your gender. And for someone like me, sometimes it's difficult for me to get my head around because I don't understand the asinine nature of that. I'm not, but it does exist. And as a friend, you're telling me, and I know this is an experiential truth. I know it's not. And I have daughters and a wife. My wife would tell me we'd have guys come over to give proposals for things, manly things at the house, like carpentry and driveway. And, it's like, well, when your husband gets home, and she's like, bro, like
that's it. Yeah.
And so it happens, it exists, but like, we just, to me, it's human. Like you're saying, like it's having those boundaries. A guy comes out of the house and I'm like, why the anger? Like, let's have a conversation. Why are you, my kids love this story. A guy came up screaming at me on an apartment complex job. We were contracted to take a bunch of trees down. He didn't want them down. They were heaving up the sidewalks, infrastructure, electric boxes. It's all underground. We're being all heaved up by the root plates. And he came down and and I put my hand up and I went, whoa, like this, like loud. And he was like, and I was like, and then what I do is I come underneath their energy and I was like, listen, man, I don't let people talk to me like that. I was like, so when you're not going to yell at me, I'm going to go over here. If you want to have a conversation, I will talk to you. We will figure this out. But strategically, it's a thing. It's about having boundaries, being able to walk away.
Did that work with him?
Well, it did. He kept coming at me, and I turned. He was screaming at the back of my head, "Don't walk away from me!" And I just went about completely ignored him.
Okay.
And then he actually saw that because what happens a lot of times, the hard hat getting knocked off of you, the yelling, the tantrum. These are strategies that have worked for that person in the past. They get loud, they get big, they swell, they yell, they get violent, and they got results. Yeah. So those results ingrained that behavior in them.
Especially with a woman in a man-woman situation.
Oh, 1,000%. That big, swollen, loud, and you're like, "Whoa, mister," And so
I'm just here to do your tree.
Yeah. So like I won't engage with it. And admittedly, like. Yeah, physical stature wise, because I found that even with my my VP Mia, people will talk to her on the phone, and then I'll call, and it's like a different person. She's like, they weren't like that with me, and I'm like, that's messed up.
It's kind of like
human nature, unfortunately.
Super common, though.
Yeah, and that's a part of it that sometimes I guess we don't see. Right? If we're not, I mean, I don't want to say I don't see it. I see it because I value the women in my life, my daughters, my wife, my clients, my VP, but you guys are living it daily. Kind of thing.
You can see it, but you can't feel it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Meaning like you can see it and you're not okay with it. And I appreciate that. But the actual feeling of it, even like a small rub, as you say, to small rub is enough to be like, but.
Yep. But by the sound of it, you've had some pretty good experiences too.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
you just kind of, like with anything, how many people on this earth, you just gotta keep trying until you find what works.
Yes.
Sure.
You know?
And then your circle gets tighter.
Yeah. And then once you have that crew, like you said, with your kids, when I'm on a job with my kids, you know, like you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You know, when they bring their friends onto the job, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You know, like if it's people that I've been doing side jobs with for the last 6 years, you know, like it's, you know, you just find the people that you can work with.
Yep.
Basically, you know, you're not going to change people. You know, if someone wants to be an asshole, they want to be an asshole.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
No, sure. And I think that to your point of I have one person reach out to me on Instagram, but a lot of people do have a hard time leaving the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I have that problem.
Yeah, right? Oh, you do? Okay. And like, I understand it to a point. How do I say this? I understand it to a point because the reason why I stayed in municipality so long is it just worked out timing wise. But by the time I got good and I could leave was the time that I got married and about to have kids and everything else. So it was just a decision I made. But I always believe that wherever I go, I deserve to be who I am and bring that standard to where I'm at. Yes. Not you kick me out because it's not accepted there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but I also had no problem leaving if it's bad enough that if administrative doesn't do their job, that I have to leave. You know what I mean? Then I would just leave. But the person that reached out to me was having a hard time leaving. I don't want to say loyalty, but just more of like, I have to go start over somewhere else, and it's an understandable situation.
Yeah, it could be a hard thing, and there's a whole psychological element to that too that could be at play. It's like when people stay in bad or abusive situations, or there's a whole. We don't have the time or depth, but there's a whole mechanism there that. When I say comfort, I don't mean comfort that it's comfortable. I mean it's the known, and sometimes the mind has a harder time with the unknown than the known, even if the known is not good for you.
Yeah, sure.
Correct.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And for me anyway, when I run into situations like that, because I'll stay in one of those situations way, way longer than I should.
Okay.
And for me, it runs down to a problem of like self-worth, because I feel like I could prove myself. Like I know I can do these things, you know, and if I can just get you to listen to me for long enough, or just listen to me in the first place, or not even listen to me, just watch, just let me do it. Like if you would just, you know, you'll be able to see that I can do it. Like I have the confidence in my abilities that I know I can do it, that I think I can convince you that I can do it. Yeah. And if I can't convince you that I can do it, then I feel like, then I start to question my abilities. I start to think maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe I didn't do that good of a job. Maybe I am a crap climber. You know, like if I can't even get this person to think that I'm doing a good job, how am I going to get anybody else to think that I'm doing a good job? You know, like that's where it starts to, you know, so I'll stay because I want to convince you that I'm not. You know, like I can do this, you know, like, and we could actually get along and we could actually do these things together. And like, this could actually be a good thing because I see that potential, you know?
That's it. You said you see the potential. That's again, every person we've talked to so far, there's a certain thing, but that's what makes you a good person. Most people are like, well, just stupid, just leave. And it's like, no, like I'm trying to like make just the potential of a relationship working is a good thing to have. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
It
would be worth it to work through these things.
Yes.
You know,
yes. Super key right there. And Dan, exactly. And I will say this, and we can pivot whatever. I will say this. I don't know if you still have that challenge or not, but I will say this based on my experience with the municipality. I put the time in. I put enough time in, and the results speak for themselves, and I still don't get the respect.
Yeah.
So wait, hold on. To the point I'm trying to get at. So what you said is excellent, I love it because I want my kids are 13, 10, and 6. I want them to have that, but I also want them to realize that at some point, like, you are awesome. But at some point, you have to be like, you know what? That person is never going to give me respect, even if I become the president of the United States, even if I win $100 million in a lottery, even if I save people from a burning home. Like, they're not going to respect you regardless. And it's
That's
just unfortunate.
the hardest thing in the world to try and accept or learn how to accept. There's one company in particular where that was the case with me, and I definitely very much, gave it my all and wanted it to work, and it didn't, and it, but I very much, I put my all into it, and I had to come to that, it doesn't matter how long I keep trying or how good of a job I do. It's literally never going to make a difference, And
unfortunately, that's part of human nature. Like, I can't explain it. So
there's so much depth there.
It's heartbreaking.
It's almost a whole nother episode. Like, well, it's almost no, honestly, and because I'm hearing so many themes, because some of it's about validation and where do we get it and how do we, and then some of it's about investing in those relationships and others. I have it on the other side where it's not me going to a place, but people coming here and I see their potential. Like the girl Cheryl I was talking to you about. I mean, she was here, Michaela, so 96, 7, 8, from 98, 6 to like 2000, somewhere in there. And he was a farm kid, grew up near here, and I took her from not knowing anything to the point where she was setting throw lines and got really good with saws and anticipating workflow. And then I put her in trees and she started climbing and cutting, and she got like damn good. And she had some issues and there was things and whatever, but I just remember I kept trying because I thought if she could see the greatness in herself, she could overcome all this other stuff. And sometimes you got to know, like, sometimes people just aren't ready to receive it. On the other side of it, sometimes it's hard because and not trying to pull back the veil on my own psychosis or whatever, but validation is a thing. It's like, is that what we're looking for? And there's a switch when we can learn to self-validate. And this is really foo-foo-y, like psychology stuff. But it's like if we can learn that self-love, right? Like, because we've talked about being believers or whatever. And like, I try to look, and this is just me, I'm not preaching at all. But like, it's me looking in the Bible or whatever. What does God say about who I am? It's those things.
That you're a dollar bill.
What's that?
I said that you're a dollar bill.
Meaning?
Doesn't matter whether the dollar bill is just fresh printed off the press, or if it's been through somebody's wallet and fell out and was crumpled up and got ran over by a car. It's still a dollar.
Yeah. There's value. So there's what you're saying is there's value.
Yeah. It's still worth $1, whether it's crumpled up or it's brand new.
Correct.
It's still $1.
I love that. And my message to anyone listening or you or whoever is like, you have value. You are awesome. You don't need Joe Schmo or Susie Q or Billy or whatever to tell you you're awesome, because you have an innate sense of that in you, right? So like, and sometimes a lot of those interpersonal relationships come from that because there's a whole nother thing for me personally that I don't have the time or inclination to get into. If we do my thing at some point, I will share that. But that was an issue for me. Validation and just like probably from stuff I dealt with as a kid, in my family dynamic. Right. So, that's
I love
it's a whole rabbit hole. I wasn't intending on going, but like, when I hear that, it is hard because you're like, I just want to prove it to you. And that's almost how I felt when that dude came out yelling at me. Like, all I want is for him to go, man, you guys did a great job today. And I'm already behind the 8 ball because he's pissed off because I vibrated his house. How do I win now?
Yeah. Like you were having a great day. Everything's going fine. You're like, like all the branches came down smoothly, all the picks were great, you know, like you drop the stem, you guys are getting ready to clean up, feeling great, and then they come out and they tell you did a horrible job. Like I was feeling really great about that all day, you know, like.
And then you made me poopy pants.
Yeah.
You made me poopy pants.
Yeah.
Right?
And now I'm thinking about, did I do a shitty job? You know, like, and
it's like, am I wrong here? And honestly, I do think that is a good gift to have, to flip the script around and look at yourself and question that. We have to do it though sometimes without self-inflicting unnecessary wounds, you know, kind of thing.
Or too far.
Or you go to a friend
Too far.
and you bounce it. You go, yo, man, here's what happened today. This guy came out and blah blah blah. And you're like, nah, that guy's nuts. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for validating me. You know,
Or you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And be prepared to hear the truth. Right?
Like Athena, no, like you're wrong in this situation. I'm sorry, but that's a friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's crazy. He's out of control. It's like, no, like tell me the situation, understand it, and then you help your friend get to the next situation possible.
Yep. Like what is it? Better is a coarse rebuke from a friend than a kiss of an enemy.
I've never heard that, but
I haven't heard that one either.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's like it might be a bitter pill for me to swallow. For you, someone I look up to and as a friend to go, nah, dude, you're off. Yeah. Then someone is like, yeah, you're awesome, dude, but he's not. They don't have my best interest at heart. You're rebuking me in my best interest. They're kissing me with the knife behind my back.
Right.
Yeah, spot on. If it's cool, I wanted to do like a hard pivot with this. Validation, experience of all that, and I know that you're interested in doing tree climbing competitions.
Right.
So the reason why I find the parallel to that is my experience in a tree climbing competition going into my first one. Just to give people an idea, I did all the climbing for years before that. Taut line, using a ladder, put the ladder on a tree with spikes on, go up to the ladder about 20, 30 feet, spike live trees.
Something wrong with that?
You don't Yeah. But that was the norm, right? That's how I learned. So by the time I got to the competition scene, I'd never thrown a throw line. I didn't even know aerial rescue was a thing, so I didn't know anything about aerial rescue. I learned footlock 3 days before the competition. Wood climb, I thought I was smoking because I worked trees all day. That's wrong. And speed climb, believe it or not, same thing. I was smoking. I climbed trees. Wrong. That's not how it works. With that being said, since with my hearing loss and real slow connecting with people, it took me 2015 an CrossFit injury. But in the 5 years, a lot of it, or even one more after, but a lot of it was based on my validation. I only feel good if I do good. So, full disclosure, everybody listening, when you do a competition, please do not don't let validation be a part of the experience. We're a community that loves, supports, and helps each other to become better versions of ourselves and as climbers and competitive competition climbers.
It's a learning competition, not an ego competition.
It 100%. But the challenge you'll have, Paul I have, is that your ego is going to be the challenge, not other people. Your ego. So with that being said, I thought it's a perfect segue to, because the validation aspect does play in the competition scene as well. You told me are you still planning on doing competitions? Okay. There we go.
Just waiting for you to send me the info.
Oh, I got you. I told you, I got you. No problems. You're in New York. You'll be able to do New York competition. Obviously, New Jersey's going to be open. But I got your back on that. But my question to you is, what is the intrigue? What's the intrigue? What made you, after 10 years, finally be like, this is something I would like to jump into?
Probably this is the time that the opportunity showed up for me to be able to. I haven't just wanted to do it. And, I've wanted to do it the whole time. It just never really kind of happened, or I wasn't in I didn't know the right people or even how to get involved, or, it's my tree world experience has kind of just been learning things as they've been popping up, because there's a million different things to learn about, you know? So I just keep expanding on the things that come into my world at the time. Yeah. And and I grew up with, a big family. And so there was a lot of competition. So, I just inherently get excited about a competition, to begin with. And I also believe you're not living unless you're learning. Like if you're not learning anything, what's the point? You're literally just taking up space. So every day you should be learning something new. And it's just, I could climb better, I could learn different techniques, maybe become a little bit faster, I don't know, have fun swinging around in a tree that I know isn't going to fall apart on me, it's just, sure. They're not going to set up a competition and put bells in a tree if they know you swing off that branch, it's going to crack in half, I don't know, there's going to be 5 other guys that are going doing the same thing. I'm not going to be up there and be having to worried about not dying, I don't know. It could be for fun.
Yeah, there's a mental mental relief knowing that, which is shout out to volunteers, yourself especially, shout out to volunteers that spend a lot of time setting up the trees and making sure that the rest of us can run through the trees without having to think about that aspect of it. But the tie-in point and stuff.
And when you go to an expo, the expo is only 2-3 days. You can try out a different kind of saddle or maybe a different kind of rope system and have your 15 minutes of playing around with it. But that's all you're really going to get, and once you start getting into production, you don't have as much time to be on the job and be able to let's just try this out and see what happens. That does happen, on jobs, but it's not an everyday thing where you're going to be able to be let's explore how to do this, next month we have this job where we can try out this thing and that might be great, So I feel like you kind of, if you're only working all the time, you lose out on options that you may have in the future or I don't know. You kind of just get stuck under a rock.
No, you're right.
Basically.
You don't have that. You're worried about kind of getting the job done versus having the ability to explore.
Right. So it kind of hinders your ability to learn if you're always just working.
I agree.
You're just spot on.
So going to a competition, I feel like would help. Time is very limited in my life, and it is very hard for me to find time to do things. And if I'm going to practice to be a better climber, I have to figure out how to fit that into a schedule, and I can't necessarily rely on being able to fit that into work. Yes. So if I start getting into the competitions, it'll help me be able to have the time to get that practice.
Yeah. You'll carve that time specific for it.
The only other thing I was just going to touch on is to be and maybe you're savvy to this already, but because you met Brick, but in those comps, be ready to forge some new connections and some new relationships, especially if you, so not only in your chapter where you're rooted, but if you come to Jersey, I mean, I can obviously speak on Jersey because I've been a part of that for 25 years or whatever. I mean, the last couple comps have just been, I mean, from a camaraderie standpoint, and just they've been awesome. Pendel, we're like brothers and sisters with the Pendel chapter. I mean, that's a great group. So you begin to recognize people oh, I saw you. Hey, you were in my rotation and you really start to develop, and you're developing the right type of relationship. It's more that arborist, open, accepting, you're in the shared struggle. We've talked about this before. It's kind of a theme. My wife was a nurse, and she would say to me, and I've shared the story before on here, you guys are a little weird. So you guys work, and then we go and we do work days.
Kind of a requirement.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Right. And we volunteer. She's so you're going to go do tree work for free and take all your equipment? It's yeah, pretty much. It's like a grown-up play date.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So, but it's when you see that person and you're walking and past a hall or whatever, and you recognize it's because we know how tough it is. we're out there in the elements, we're working in a risky environment. There is, or there should be like a mutual respect because of the shared struggle.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
And that respect leads to motivation.
Yeah.
I think.
I like that.
And I'm glad you made the point of limited time and production for work. Those are the two big challenges. Challenges for people to kind of get away. Like, but listen, if you make, and you already been to the expo, but if you make time for the expo, conference, tree competitions, you're getting to leave your fishbowl. We were talking about this, but like the idea is you're so, like you said, under a rock, but you're so focused on this all the time, it's gonna become work. I believe it's gonna lose its fun.
Right.
In my opinion. I don't know.
Hey, listen, man, it happens to me.
Right.
And that's what you're saying it, and I'm like, all right, that's probably where I'm at right now. Because winter, it's cold, it's a grind. We're not working as much. Cash flow's tight. Like there are all these things that kind of. You're actually reminding me. I need a distraction.
Okay, good.
I need Arbor Expo.
Yeah.
I need Garden State Tree Conference.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and actually, this, you know,
and this too.
This has been
podcast
cathartic for us.
So whenever you're doing anything, there's quality, there's quickness, and there's money, right?
Okay.
There's the time that it's going to take, how well you can do it, and how cheap you can do it for. Out of those three options, you can only have two.
Yeah.
With everything.
That's right.
If you're going to have it fast and well done, it's not going to be cheap. If you're going to have it well done and cheap, it's not going to, or if you're going to have it like done well and cheap, it's not going to be fast. Right? So any of those, you can only have two of those three at the same time. You know, so when you're doing production, it's mostly cheap and fast. Right? They don't really care about quality because they just want the money. You know, they have 10 jobs to do this week. You know, like you got to get all those 10 jobs done this week or else it's going to mess my schedule up for 3 weeks. You know, and then the company's not going to make money and we can't pay for these 10 trucks that we have and, you know, whatever. Yeah. So you get stuck in that grind of just the cheap and the fast and you forget about the quality. Yeah. But then if you don't have the quality, then, you know, your company's reputation starts to go down and everything. So you still got to like figure out how to be able to get that quality in there somewhere. Yeah. And you can't get the quality without the education.
1,000%.
Nice.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I just, while you said that, it was funny because you were talking about business. I'm also like, that applies to the person as well.
To everything, yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right? With anything, you can only have two of those three things.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've been on, you know, early in my career trying to kind of make a name and a reputation. You're trying to just crank stuff out and then you realize it's not a good formula, which is what led, and we talked about mentors in an episode a while back about, in our case, the Chisholms, but what was the man's name that you said?
Kevin Kenny.
Yeah, so Kevin was that role for you where you realize, you know what? If I go out and I separate myself based on my education and knowledge, now I can command a little more. I can take my time and I can get sort of known either personally or as a business as that person of quality, integrity. You know, I'm doing the right thing for the trees, but I'm also operating my business at a level of high integrity. And now I can command more in the marketplace and I can slow my pace down a little bit and pay attention to the details of the things and how we do them, you know. Yeah. But even that being said, just business just brings its own set of intensity. It's just kind of normal, like operational stuff, you know.
Ties right into when we were talking earlier, and how you leave a job is more important than how you actually do the job. Yeah. You know, so when you take that time away and you focus more on the quality, you know, you'll end up being way less stressed. Agreed. I feel like, you know, because you have clients that care about the quality of the work and they don't care that it might take you an extra, 2 hours because they know, their neighbors walking down the road, stop and are like, what are you doing? Because your trees look great, or like your plants look great. Like your yard always looks so amazing.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to care that it took you a day and a half instead of a day,
And you get to charge correctly for it.
Right.
Yes.
Because you're doing good quality work.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And the big thing is, and I've said this before about, say, like a coffee shop. Someone complains about like going to because there's Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
And then there's like the local, we have one, what's it called? Death of the Fox. They do beer and coffee. They roast their own. They have, like
a true barista.
Yeah. Like real honest, like not a big chain, but like a local. And I'm going to pay more there.
Got you.
But I'm also paying.
It's going to taste way better.
Way better. The ingredients are better. So if I want them to exist in the marketplace, I got to be willing to pay a little bit extra money for, and I do. I don't say, I mean, I've probably been to Dunkin' right there twice in a year.
Oh, wow.
Because I make my own.
Yeah, you make
and the only time I go there is if like the crew wants something, I'll run out and do a coffee run. But for the most part, I'd rather.
Yeah, like you're supporting a business and people that you kind of stand by in the process.
And you will find your market for your quality.
Right.
Because there's people that want, Mercedes-Benz, and there's people that want whatever the low, like the Hyundai. I don't know.
They want you to come and just top the trees because it's blocking the view to whatever. They don't care that the tree's going to die in 5 years,
And people say that. Like, I don't care if that's like, that's great. You don't.
But I do.
But I do.
And I'll tap out. I walk away. I'm just
I can't do it.
No,
I can't. No. I'm sorry.
Principle-centered, ethical, moral, lighthouse principles.
Yeah.
These are cool themes that I like how they're developing, but also like the guests that are coming on and are just, there's like this intuitive sort of natural vibe, which I'm digging it. It's awesome. So I appreciate that. I really do, that you're, that you resonate with all that. And I had no idea that was going to be the case. You know what I mean? Which is cool.
Yeah. So. Just for the listeners, the way that Athena and I met was in New York at Alpine. Alpine Tree Service?
Right.
Yeah, so Alpine Tree Service. I went up there with a company to teach aerial rescue training. And I was telling Paul earlier that the more I get into, from the beginning and the more I get into being an instructor with training, my favorite thing in the whole world is there's always one or two people, maybe three, at the end of every class that you could see is super hungry, super like eager, super enthusiastic, super just the person that you want to hang out with. You were one of those people that came up, and I told him, I was like, it was just like you came like, thank you for being here. I don't even know exactly what you said, but it was the energy you brought was you were in gratitude for having that experience. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, that's how we met, and then from that point, it's been pretty much expos, right?
Yeah,
I think expos.
Pretty much every expo is when we get to meet.
Fifth time, seeing each other in person, right?
Yeah,
that's cool.
So it's
actually,
right. So, but to your point, like there's a residency to
100%.
People's energy and stuff, and then that's why when we always try to have guests on, and there's always the logistics, where people are and all that stuff, and obviously brought your name into the mix, and just ask if you can make it happen. Super stoked that you were able to, because now you get to meet.
Well, what's cool is, I mean, you were like, she's 3.5 hours away. I was like, ooh, you're like, no, she'll drive. And I was like, what? I was like, cool.
He asked
awesome.
me, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course,
awesome.
Duh.
That's awesome.
And just so you know, and for the listeners, because the whole theme of the podcast is having these discussions in and around comps and expos and things. This relationship is basically the same as what you two guys have. Fast forward 20 years. So I've told the story and I don't want to beat it up, but like we met at our chapter and it was like, you see each other. You're like, oh, I reckon. Oh, he was here last time.
Right.
Oh, he was there last time. Then you go to an expo and you're like, oh, that's Brick from Jersey chapter. He's in my chapter. What's up?
Like, hey, what's up, dude?
Right?
Like, how's it going? You know?
Then we sit down and we have a beer, we have a coffee, we have a meal, and it's just And then you're looking for each other. Yo, what's up? And you're in the hallway, and now we do a podcast. So I mean, this is the way. This is the way things go. You know, if you're willing to invest in those relationships, those engagements, and you're willing to come up to somebody enthusiastically in gratitude and have that conversation, that's what it's all about.
Oh, 100%. I agree. All
right. Thank you guys very much for having me.
No, listen, you are most welcome. I'm trying to figure out a new way I want to figure out how to ask the guests if there's something that you want to bring up. You know what I mean? And most people are like, no, and that's fine. But is there something that you want to talk about?
Yeah, almost like something that you wanted to offload when you walked in, or you came here maybe with something and you were like, hey, man, I hope I get a chance to talk about this.
I had no idea what was even going to be talked about, or like I didn't know if it was going to be more about me or like science of trees or, you know, like the most recent thing that I learned that I'm like super excited about. I don't know why, but I'm super excited about this. So you were talking earlier about how you're very organic, right? Every year I pick a new topic to kind of delve into and just give myself a year to learn about it and see whether I want to keep going with it or not. And a couple years ago, that topic was making things out of plants and trees and stuff. So every time I went to a job, just whatever tree I was working on, or whatever plant I was working with for like plant healthcare or something, like say a rhododendron, you know, and I'd go and I'd look up, what are rhododendron flowers good for? You know, like what are leaves good for? Can you do anything with the roots? You know, just like figuring out the science of just whatever plant comes into my world that day, you know, and learned that willow trees, especially white willow trees, have salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is aspirin. Like it's just the aspirin that we have now is synthetic salicylic acid, but the original true form was just from willow trees. So taught my boys and I, you know, we in the springtime, you take the second year, you don't want to go past the third year growth. The first year growth still kind of, the second is what you want to aim for. Okay. But, you know, you get the second year growth, you just take off a whole bunch of the branches and the bark peels super easy. Like you could just hit it with your thumb basically and you peel it off. You take all the bark peels, you put it in a jar, stuff as many of them as you can, fill the jar with, it's got to be like at least 90 proof alcohol. So, you know, if you want to be really freaking strong and go Everclear or whatever, but there's like New England or Newfoundland or something like that. I think it's like it hits the 90 mark. You know, it's like it's Everclear is the most. Yeah. And then it's the step down. Okay. So you fill the jar with that and you let it sit for 6 weeks, like in a dark place, like in your basement. You just go down every day and just shake it up a little bit. After the 6 weeks, you strain it out and you've got liquid aspirin. You know, wow. Mix some like lavender in it if you want or something, because it's pretty strong. You know, it's a pretty strong taste. You do, you know, you just it goes off like your body weight, you know, as to how much dosage you would use. But it's pretty strong tasting. So you you put like magnolia in it or something, or you know, whatever. The taste but so I found out. So you know, we can make our own aspirin. Recently, was in a class of an arborist from England, and in England and in Britain, apple cider is like a staple. Like everywhere you go, there's apple cider. You know, everybody drinks apple cider. So their apple orchards are very important to them. However, their population is way significantly higher than ours in a small space. Yeah. So they have a lot of buildings and houses that are right next to each other. So doing sprays, pesticide sprays for fungicides isn't really an option because the drift is like you know, right there, you know, so if they can't spray, how do they handle their like apple scab and things like that? They figured out that salicylic acid bites the apple scab and like funguses that fungi, I keep saying that apple trees get. So they started mulching willow trees, using willow tree mulch around the trees. As the mulch decomposes, it releases the salicylic acid that gets absorbed through the roots of the tree. Awesome. And it's a natural way to avoid the apple scab and stuff without having to use the sprays and hurting the people. Wow. You know, so like, I get really excited about things like that. Yeah, no, you know? So like, that's really cool. That is I got to start calling all the apple orchards in the area. Like, let's sell them, cool. Willow tree bark, like mulch, like, cool. I don't know. I get really excited about things like that.
Yeah.
Or like the magnolia flowers. I found out magnolia flower petals are, you'd probably like this, very, very good for the respiratory system and sinuses and things like that. And I would, like every single winter, I would get a bad sinus infection, head cold that lasts for like at least 6 weeks. Wow. It happened once a year. It would just happen the one time and it would be horrible and just stay forever. And then, I had to work on a magnolia tree, started doing some research and found out that magnolia flower petals are great, for that part of the
like
system.
The big magnolias, like the southern okay.
Yep. And so I just, when I was pruning them, I'd take a bunch of the flower petals and dehydrate them, and then they're very, very strong. Like they are very, like if you have put them in a tea or something like that, you only need like one petal.
Because they're
very fragrant, but they're very strong. Yep. So if you dehydrate them and then you like kind of mortar the petals into powder. Yep. You could either sprinkle the powder on it like in a drink that you're drinking, or I really like it like on top of salad. Or you just sprinkle it, you just incorporate it into your diet. And I don't get that sinus infection in the winter anymore.
Wow.
So
yeah, I do love that. And you know what? Thanks for saying, like, that is what a cool idea to just, you're on a site and pick one of your plants and go, you're like becoming a shaman, basically.
No, for real.
Yeah, like
I just don't like doctors.
Listen, I mean, that's awesome.
That's exactly why. I mean, for me, the podcast is talk about all the stuff we talked about, but you just showed, I didn't know, but you just showed us another aspect of another depth in a scientific direction.
No, I just learned something, and now it's given me something to go, I'm on Jana's property. There's an oak there. There's like, and some of the
what
things.
What can they do?
Yeah, like willow bark extract, I was familiar with that part, but the like it's just.
But I'll even say this, what you did was just give the listeners too, but a cool thing to do on a job now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, do your work, whatever, but find one thing that you can learn about.
Yeah.
And then try to really dive into it.
I do that every job.
That's awesome. Like,
what's cool about that is too, for someone like me whose brain is old and crusty, you're taking that information in slowly, right? So like you're on a job and you're like, boom, and you research it and you kind of commit it to memory. Yeah. And you can own that one piece.
Yeah.
And then go to another one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd have to do one a week instead of
one. And
learn, but no, I think that's
cool. That
adds
good.
an element
that was my point. That question was like, you got something. You gave it to us.
Yeah, that adds an element of intrigue, man, to your day. It's finding that little thing to fan the flames of passion.
Yeah,
for the work.
There you go.
Right.
Which is learning how to find that bounce to get over those little hurdles we have to get over.
Yeah, the dull moments.
Yeah.
Happen.
Cool.
Good. I think we definitely.
Are we good?
This is fun.
So the only other thing I was thinking of, social media, like if anybody wants to just kind of engage, follow you, what's the best place to get you? You're on Instagram, right?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Then
That's all I got.
It's all good. What is your handle? Like, how do they find you? Is it
Athena Odell?
Okay.
I think Instagram might be Athena.Odell.
Okay.
I'm not really sure, but it's just my my name.
Cool. Yep.
My picture is on the profile thing, so you know it's me.
Perfect. Awesome. Well,
I don't have like a million different pages or anything.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit down with you, to get to know someone now I can see on a trade show floor.
Yeah.
And say what's up. Have a conversation with, maybe grab a coffee, since I see you're a coffee lover, which is like right up my alley.
I have a coffee IV if I could.
There's what is it? There's blood in my caffeine stream.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But no, really, I mean, thank you, Brick, for making the introduction, for, inviting Athena to come down and chat with us, for making the drive down.
Yeah, that's super cool.
There's a depth of your story that we didn't touch on. That's just like, also for letting me know that perspective in life is important. Whatever challenges we have, people have things, we don't know what they're carrying. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And I think that's where empathy and compassion can really go a long way in this world of quick responses, right? In that fight mentality of social media, I think we can really do each other harm sometimes unnecessarily. I think if we can take that step back and take a breath and try to think to yourself, where is this person coming from with these feelings that they're showing? Yeah.
Yeah. You nailed it. Perfect way to
land the plane.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, y'all. We're out.